Hi everyone,
Okay.
and welcome to SEMA. SEMA is a program where we invite an expert on our show to talk about the area of expertise. And this week we've been blessed with Professor Dr. Dana Flavin to talk to us about cancer and the accompanying pathogens that are associated with cancer. And the subject is why the tumor frequency is not enough. Now, Dana, we're so lucky to have you on board with us. You've had a total of 37 years devoted to research. You started the Foundation for Collaborative Medicine and the research in Connecticut, a non-profit organisation, yay, where she shares her knowledge in the areas of medicine, pharmacology and nutrition with patients and colleagues from around the world. You're the sort of person that we need to support, Dana, and what you're doing is just tremendous. In this episode, you'll learn how you can improve the frequencies for cancer patients. It has to do with the pathogens which are commonly found in the patients of cancer people, and they need to be programmed in for better positive results. Dr. Flavin, I just had words with her earlier on. She prefers to be called Dada, low key. I love that. She holds an honorary professor title from the Leicester School of Pharmacy at the De Montfort University in the UK, where she currently teaches the pharmacology of anti-cancer nutrients and off-label drugs. She has a degree in psychology and chemistry from the Loyola University, and she has completed the graduate school in pharmacology at Chicago Medical School. Lana, you've been to many places. You've done an awful lot of training, and there's more as well. I don't really know whether we've got time to go through all the things that you've done, but you're certainly probably overqualified for our show. We're so very excited that you've accepted our invitation to teach us a thing or two. So welcome, Dana, to our show.
Thank you. There's no such thing as overqualified to save a life. We're all underqualified. We need to learn from each other.
When I read about the subject that we're going to be talking about today, it's really the mother vein, isn't it?
Yes.
Of all the conditions that can take people down, it's cancer. And you've got your research and papers to back up what you're thinking. If you can please explain to us why the tumor frequency is not enough.
Right. Okay. I also want to say we're actually, the foundation is actually working on a book for patients to teach them what they need to do on their own part. So any help we can get with that book would be great, because then we can also mention the importance of frequencies in the book. Why is it not enough? Frequencies, the thing is, if you take a tumor cell outside of the body and you test it, you are getting one specific frequency, or maybe two or three. But in general, you're not getting the pathogens that are in the body that actually go into the tumor cell. Professor Seneff from MIT claims that the tumors are actually helping to wall off a lot of the pathogens in the body. But what I'm also seeing is that we're getting bacteria that would normally be in the mouth or in the skin moving into these tumors, and they're actually helping the tumors to grow. A lot of these bacteria are pathogenic, but they seem to be kept in remission in the body in general. Once they get into the tumor, however, they are growth factors. So they're helping the tumors to grow. So do the viruses. The viruses work in multiple ways. One of them is to affect the DNA. The other one is to lower the immune system. For example, all the viruses that cause cancer, or hepatitis, or HIV, papilloma, and Epstein-Barr, all of those actually lower the immune system. So those are frequencies that are important, because these viruses do play a major role. Many, in fact, almost most of my patients are carrying an Epstein-Barr virus. Epstein-Barr virus shifts the immune system so that it increases a cytokine called interleukin-10, which shuts down the T killer cells and shuts down the Th1 lymphocytes. Now, there's two families of lymphocytes. And I can't say they're good guys and bad guys because each one has its own purpose. But the Th1s are to fight cancer and viruses, and they're knocked down by cancer. So most of the cancers increases interleukin 10, I suspect from the viruses, but we know that they do shut the immune system down. So that's one example of why just going into the frequency of a tumor cell itself is not enough. The next step, and this one is everybody. Every single patient has to be on a frequency for Candida because we know that the tumor cells release acid. The acid causes the fungi to grow around the tumors, and the fungi feed off the tumors, and the tumors feed off the fungi. So they are symbiotic. And this is something that most people ignore. And this is why diet plays a role in cancer, because it helps to alkalinize and to get rid of a lot of these, the acidity. So that's one, and it lowers the fungal infections. They're still there unless you block the metabolism, which I do with off-label drugs. But this is something where we're seeing more and more that if the patients begin to detox, and that then goes into parasites. I've sent a lot of patients that I had in New York, in the New York area, to Dr. Cahill, who's an expert on parasites for the United Nations. He's an elderly gentleman who's absolutely brilliant. And in my colon cancer patient, for example, we found an amoeba. In another colon cancer patient here, we found an amoeba. And the problem is that most classical physicians don't check for these parasites. And if they do, they only check for general parasites. They don't look for something like an amoeba, which is more difficult to find. So that's another area for all the gastrointestinal cancers. You need to look at two factors. One is parasites, okay? And the second is Helicobacter pylori. Now, whether you want to call Helicobacter pylori a bacteria or a virus or a pathogen, a parasite, it's all relative. To me, it looks like a parasite, but they call it a bacteria. That actually can also be treated with frequencies. And what the Indians do is they use black caraway oil, a teaspoonful a day, and that seems to get rid of it also. So that's kind of interesting that there are many parallels in therapies. And the frequencies of the tumor, this is interesting. This is work done at Princeton, but it's not in relationship to frequencies only because I didn't tell her about them. She's found that every bacteria, pathogenic and otherwise, release a frequency, release a chemical. And each chemical is different for each bacteria. Now, this is where I want you all to come in, guys, okay, and ladies. Yeah. I suspect that each one of these chemical structures that she's finding has a frequency that we can download, that we can put into our computers, because this is fascinating. And I know just from my little incidents with the Borrelia after being attacked by bird mites, and they bit the hell out of me, and I got Borrelia. When I go into certain areas of my apartment, I haven't been able to live there in 2 months. I feel the moving. You can actually feel it's Morgellons, which are spirochetes. And I thought they were all crazy, and the people with Morgellons had some sort of insanity. No, it's a real spirochete that's wrapped up in a nest they make out of the collagen in your body, and it looks like fuzz. And when everybody looks at it, they say, "Oh, it's fuzz." And it is. Dr. Schlicker in California said no. He's actually under a very, very high-powered microscope showed that there's spirochetes inside this. They're sort of diamond shaped. So all of these people are not crazy, and they're not suffering from some dementia or anything else. And they're not imagining this. It's not delusional. It's real. And what I noticed was that my body reacts differently. And I had read years ago that Wi-Fi can stimulate parasites. And I can attest to that because when my Wi-Fi is on, these little beasties, now I'm killing them off. Unfortunately, not yet with the frequencies because I have to set up my spooky too. So, and I want this for my patients too because it's fantastic, and we need a way that they can actually carry this on their body or whatever and keep it on so that we can continuously having this type of an effect.
Right.
But anyway, long story short, the parasites in the body are also needed to be addressed with frequencies because, as I said, just the cancer itself, you've got different frequencies, and different bacteria will release different frequencies, and different bacteria have different chemicals. So if you guys can look at the chemical structures, her name is Bonnie, she did a YouTube video also, fantastic one. She's quite brilliant. And I was debating on writing to her about frequencies. And then I thought, nah, she's working for one of the pharmaceutical companies. They're not going to be interested in frequencies unless you can put it in a pill. You can put it in a pill and sell it. They'll be really happy. But we don't want to do that. We just want to save lives.
Sure.
So yeah, that's where it's really important to look at all of the different parameters in the patients. You can test the patients or have them tested for chlamydia mycoplasma, which they also don't test very often. These can also play a role in the cancer patients. The problem with a lot of this is that the classical medicine physicians don't look for all of these parameters for two reasons. One is they can't be bothered. They think, oh, it's a tumor there and that's it. And the thing is, it's like the elephant in the room. They see it there, but they don't realize that the elephant wouldn't even be there if it weren't for all these little pathogens. And so what they do is they just go for the elephant and they try to destroy it. And what happens is all those pathogens are then released in the body. There's no protection anymore for the body that would normally be walled off by the tumors. And so the pathogens go all over and they start with metastases, also because of cancer stem cells. So the chemo, the only thing that the chemo does sometimes is to help to get rid of some of the pathogens because it kills everything, including the patient. So you get rid of a lot of the pathogens, and that might help for a while. In fact, in some situations, it actually helps for a longer period of time. But you have to detox. It's just imperative. And this is what we're seeing. I just reversed a stage 4 melanoma. She had been given about, 3 months to live. They had used interferon for 1.5 years on the woman. She was 42, now she's 44. But she was 42, had gone through 1.5 years of interferon, went from stage 3B to 4B, and they said, that's it, we can't do anymore. There's nothing that will help you. And she found me. God knows how, bless her heart. I don't do heavy-duty marketing here. I just want to save lives. That's why I want the book out, so I can get some peace. I want everybody to know what I know, what I've learned for the past 40 years. Anyway, long story short, we detoxed her. We got rid of heavy metals. They go right into the tumors. The amalgam, absolutely right into the tumors. Some of the immune systems are shut down by heavy metal implants. For example, some people are sensitive to different metals, and if they have an implant in their teeth, sometimes those metals can disturb their whole immune system. So they should be tested before they ever get any implants to make sure they're not sensitive to any of the metals. Number one. Number two, amalgam. Now, my father was a dentist and an oral surgeon, and my toy when I was a child was playing with mercury. So I think that this incredible obsession to know everything in the world has to do with the mercury probably making me half mad. But the mercury gets right in. It leaches out because of the acidity in the body. And the patients are so acidic because their tumors are releasing acid all the time. So they're helping the fungi to grow. They're helping bacteria to grow. They're helping the viruses to grow. They're helping parasites to grow. And they're leaching out heavy metals from their amalgam. So if they have amalgam in their mouth, they have to get it out, but slowly and with a biological dentist. Okay, we do detox with Panacea, which is zeolite, but there's a couple of others that get rid of them too. There's different people that I know that have products that are pretty good. Klinghart's isn't bad either. He uses coriander in the morning and chlorella in the afternoon, and that seems to work also very well. And it's interesting because coriander is a very important actually herb or mineral substance, I mean. And it's a herb. You guys say herb, we say herb in America because we don't know how to speak English yet. It's a herb that binds on the heavy metals and brings it into the liver. Okay, now if you don't take chlorella in the afternoon, it keeps going through the liver. If you take chlorella in the afternoon, it pulls it out into the gastrointestinal tract and helps to eliminate it from the body. So you have to continuously do this every day. And we don't eat under.
The chlorella is the green thing, always like a spirulina.
Right. And please always make sure it's from a good source. This is another problem. We're finding a lot of cadmium and a lot of pesticides in the herbs. And they have to be from a good source. And this is frightening me as really a physician in oncology, that how the heck are we going to get our patients detoxed from something that's going to add more toxins? Just like they all have to eat organic, the glyphosates from Roundup and the pesticides are actually altering probably at least 50 enzymes. Again, Dr. Seneff or Professor Seneff from MIT has written many, many articles on this. I'm surprised she's still alive. I said to her, be careful. The thing is, what we're finding more and more is that they're affecting, for example, the sulfation. Now, sulfa is probably one of the most important factors in our whole body, and it's in all the brassica, so all the broccoli and cauliflower and kale and those horrible little things that I hate. What are they called? Brussels sprouts. Mommy used to burn them to death. My mother was sort of cum laude in medicine, John, but she couldn't cook an egg. I mean, it was awful. Her idea of broccoli was to take it from the freezer, throw it into a pot of boiling water, and put a cover on it, leave it for an hour cooking. So I said, it used to slide out of the pan like a dead animal. And I couldn't eat any of this, and the dog wouldn't even eat it. So I was in a real tough situation as a child.
Mm-hmm.
As I have found out how important this is, I'm beginning to absolutely love broccoli, and I stir fry or steam it. And when I noticed that the cabbage, this I never expected before. I was up in Somerset in England helping a cousin of mine. This is in the beginning of my Borrelia disease, not knowing what the hell I had. I thought I had mites, and I thought they were still living on me, so I'm freaking out, not knowing what it is, because none of my colleagues knew what the hell it was, and I had to find it myself. I'm helping her in her garden, and I worked all day long pulling weeds with her. She's totally crazy, but she's a wonderful organic gardener. And in the evening, I mean, I hurt everywhere. There wasn't a part of my body that didn't hurt. She served a dinner full of cabbage, which I normally hated, but she's such a good cook that even that tasted great. And so I had all of this brassica, because she has all this kale and she had cabbage and so on. Wonderful cook. I even had meat, which I didn't normally eat, but I do now. And what happened? The next morning, absolutely no pain. And I said, oh my God, this is incredible. And it's sulfa. And the sulfa is the first thing to go in our bodies when we are having an inflammation. And what messes up sulfa? Glyphosates. Totally. So you have to sulfate your vitamin D in order to have your vitamin D effective. So if you're just taking vitamin D, it's not sulfated. And even if you're in the sun, if you're eating glyphosates in your food, if you're getting foods that full of pesticides, you're not going to be making your vitamin D. And this is frightening, because we're seeing this all across the board in our patients where they're vitamin D deficient. And we can't figure out why. Well, it's obvious if you know anything about pesticides, but you can't publish this because your life will be in danger. But this is what we're seeing.
That's remarkable. So eating basically any product that's made in modern farming now, by modern farming processes, is going to have the glyphosate. And so people are going to, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, be very deficient in vitamin C, because they don't have much sunlight anyway, like in the UK and many parts of America.
Absolutely. This is what we're seeing. We're seeing these deficiencies, plus the fact there's this over farming, using these monocultures of farming, where they're taking all of the nutrients out of the soil, and the nutrients are not coming back into the body. That's another problem. I give Shilajit or just fulvic acid to help replace the minerals in the body, because it's really important. And these trace minerals rebalance DNA. And DNA needs certain trace minerals in order to have stability. Otherwise, it's unstable.
Okay, but if you just add like fulvic acid, I didn't quite catch that other.
Fulvic acid.
Okay.
FULVIC, fulvic, or or Shilajit. Shilajit or Shilajit, SHILAJIT, I believe, is actually coming from I think the Himalayas, and it's a very, very complete. It's a very complete mineral supplement. It's very, very helpful. In the root plants, this is where all of these trace minerals are. Our root plants are completely deprived now of the trace minerals because of the monoculture, and because the soil is deficient from the acid rain. The soil is deficient from the aluminum that's coming from the chemtrails, and it's changing the pH of the soil. So your bacteria is changing the soil too, and we need the bacteria to get the right vitamins and minerals into the plant, so that when we eat it, we get the benefits. but there's no benefits if you don't have any of the bacteria in the soil. And these glyphosates and the other pesticides are absolutely wreaking havoc on the soil and the good bacteria in the soil. So there you go. It's a vicious cycle.
Right. So we know what we're up against. What do we do about it? If you have someone, it's a $1,000 question, isn't it? If someone comes to you and they say, look, we've got this stage 3 cancer, what is the first thing you would do for this person?
Tell them to eat organic.
Eat organic.
They have to eat organic. That's it. And when you eat organic, you start to get rid of the pesticides in the body. There were several articles on that were quite fascinating to show that the levels start to go down as you're eating more and more organic and getting away from the foods with pesticides in them.
Right. Okay. And then they start the organic diet. What supplements would you give them? You've given the fulvic acid.
Right. That's part of the detox, where we're replacing the minerals in the detox. The nutrients, there's certain basic nutrients that I give everybody, and they all need, well, I often give cod liver oil because they need the A and they need the D. Again, D3, but as I was saying, I'm not quite sure whether or not they're going to be sulfating it unless they're eating organic foods, because otherwise they're going to be, it's like, how can I put it? It's like taking a sponge that's the size of a micron and putting it in the ocean and expecting it to absorb all the water in the ocean. It's not going to do anything because it's going to be completely eliminated in the body by all the poisons in the body. So you try to put something good into the body and you have all these toxins and poisons and it just destroys it. And some of these herbs are actually active. They're active little creatures that actually help to reestablish homeostasis in the body. So it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. But I give often cod liver oil and or vitamin A and vitamin D3. I usually give vitamin D3 on everybody. A colleague of mine, a patent lawyer who's quite brilliant, just made a sulfated vitamin D3 that goes straight through the skin. She just patented it. She's brilliant. She's brilliant. And I said, oh my God. I said, you should put this in every single sun cream in the whole world. I said, and not to mention for every patient, because the fact that the D3 is not sulfated from the darn glyphosates. And that's shown by Dr. Seneff, as I said. So I give D3 and hope it gets in. Again, hopefully. If they're eating organic, they should have a better plus. Everybody gets curcumin and Boswellia serrata. This is why I started the foundation back in 2001. I had a patient come to me with breast cancer, multiple brain metastases. It's published in the Journal of Neuro-Oncology, mainly because I was so shocked at the results. I put her on organic food, changed her diet, had her on the basics, curcumin and beta-carotene and so on. And I put her on Boswellia serrata because I had read that in gliomas, that it sometimes helped to cause the glioma to either get smaller or that less dexamethasone was needed during radiation therapy for these patients. So I said to her, and she came to me and showed me, I mean, she was just her brain was so full of metastases, they said, you have 3 months to live. Gosh. And she was 39 years of age and had a little 6-year-old daughter. And she said, Doc, I just want to live long enough to see my little girl go to first grade. And that was about 6 months later. I thought, oh my God, go to first grade. It would be lucky if she can walk out of the office. And so I said, well, we'll try this. And she said, what are the side effects? I said, there aren't any. And she said, what do you mean there aren't any? I said, well, I'm sorry, but there aren't any side effects. And so I put her on everything, including the Boswellia. This time we did almost a gram 3 times a day. Now, I've been told later by other colleagues that Boswellia and curcumin, we know, has to have some oil, and the curcumin has to have some black pepper to be absorbed properly. And so some products have the black pepper in them, some don't. So I recommend either they take it with their juicing, which we'll talk about later, but it's very important, I put some oil in the juicing, or they take it with their meals if they have certain fats like coconut oil in their foods and so on. I don't allow other oils except olive oil or coconut oil, because the other oils, for example, corn oil will stimulate tumor growth. And many of the polyunsaturated fatty acids will just stimulate tumor growth. So we no distal, none of the polyunsaturated fatty acids. So coconut oil and olive oil are fab. They're fantastic. And they take this then 3 times a day. So they were on the curcumin and the boswellia, and it helped fantastically. I don't know if you all can get frequencies for any of these things. It would be fantastic if you could, because you could take some of my basic therapies, put those frequencies in, and start to get things moving. That would be amazing.
Spooky has a molecular weight database where the chemical constituents and compounds are the frequencies corresponding to the chemical makeup of the compounds is within that database, and it's we're going to just have a new release in a couple of days, hoping, which has got an updated database, which is even more complete.
We're way ahead of all of them. I mean, they're just learning about frequencies now, but you and I and so many others out there are very aware that frequencies can cure or kill, and that the right frequencies can actually help to eliminate the need for many of the drugs that are out there. So that this is fantastic. And if we can go ahead and do more and more programming on the different, as I said, the different chemical structures and substances, that would be fantastic, because this is something where you could do. And what I would suggest, what one should do is do a double frequency separately. And I would do and they have to drink a lot of water. This is really important to help to flush out all of the toxins. And also, you can prevent Herxheimer's, actually. So you don't have to have a Herxheimer's reaction. You have to set up the pathway for breaking down peroxynitrite. And once that pathway is set up with selenium, nicotinamide, cysteine. Cysteine is really important, acetylcysteine, because it's part of the pathway for reversing. Again, it's a sulfa, okay? It is part of the pathway for reversing peroxynitrite and toxicities and toxins. So that can be eliminated, but I think you need to do the detox partially then for a while, and then you can go on to adding the nutrients, because I think that if you try to do everything together, it's going to be too much. It'll be like a jumbling of frequencies that the body's not going to know how to take them. And you don't want to be adding one thing at one time and then destroying something at the same time. You want to have that, so you work on your detox for pathogens, and you do that for, let's say, an hour, and then a lot of liquid, and then you give a slight pause, say half an hour, so the body can readjust, because those frequencies stay in the body anyway. And then you go ahead and start giving your nutrient frequencies, if we can do that. And I think this is going to have to be tested further in the future, because I see this as really one of the best ways to go.
Right. Well, Spooky is an unstoppable movement, so watch this space.
Yeah, I think it'd be amazing, because what we're going to be seeing in the future is that we will be able to reverse a lot of these. It's good that you are international, because if you were just in one place at one time, you'd probably have somebody like Monsanto or Merck Sharp and Dome or Roche or Squibb or one of the other companies on your back, because they'd say, well, we won't sell as many of our drugs if your method works. And they're going to try to say it doesn't work, and it's all hoax, and this is just, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing is, that's why, for me also as a scientist, okay, forgive me on this, John, but as, really obsessive compulsive neurotic, I have to have proof, or as they say in America, I'm from Missouri, show me. I need data. I need before and after data. I have to. I'm also a former FDA official. I was the top toxicologist at the Food and Drug Administration, advisor to the director for toxicology at FDA. And I have to have proof, because placebos can do a lot. So I need to see, black and white, okay, here are either the antibodies, and you see them start to go down, then okay, well, this is going away. Or you do blood tests, for example, for metals or fungi, looking at that, and you can actually see it. Dark field microscope shows a lot. And you should be able to see in a dark field microscope, when you treat these patients, whether or not they're responding to anything. And then you can see from all of, I call it junk, but it's, they call it artifacts or something. It's not, it's contaminants. And it's things like they're living bacteria that actually help stimulate tumor growth. Dr. Livingston was working on them. She called them progenitor cryptococcus. Enderlein called them Enderlein bodies. They change their form and their shape depending on the frequencies in the body that are affecting them. I am convinced, although no one's actually done studies on this, that's the only thing I can say, because what I see is you add vitamin C and they change their form. You get the patients alkaline and they change their form. And what many are saying that I have known, I've known old professors, many have passed away. They were brilliant. Professor Scheidel in Munich, for example, was also working on a lot of this. He had 9 dark field microscopes. And I wish I were an expert in dark field microscopy. I'm not, and I need a dark field microscope, but I don't have it yet. What I've seen when you just look at the red blood cells in a cancer patient at a dark field microscope, advanced cancer patients, their red blood cells look like they've got little bubbles all over them. This is caused from these bacteria, and these bacteria change their form. It's very interesting. I explain it kind of like a person could go to church every Sunday and they're a good person in church, and you put them in a red light district and suddenly they change. They change their personality. What we see around the tumor cells is everything gets affected by that tumor cell. The fibroblasts start releasing immune suppressive substances and help the tumor to grow. We see that the macrophages that are normally the good guys that come in to eat the tumor change from a macrophage 1 to the bad guy, macrophage 2, which gets into those tumors and helps them to grow. So a lot of my off-label drugs work on that particular pathway also. That's complicated. We use things like metformin. Metformin helps to downregulate those macrophage 2s. So these are things where I found over the years, yes, I can reverse the cancers just without any of the off-label drugs, but because of the fact that so many patients are so contaminated, very often we need to have additional off-label drugs. Why? Wi-Fi, cell phones. These are stimulating tumor growth, and the cell phones will stimulate brain tumor growth. That's why we believe that we're seeing more and more brain tumors, because the people are holding it on their head. They may not do that. They should have a headphone that is double with air in it, so you're not getting that into your brain, or protection on your cell phone so that you don't get the radiation. And I don't know who has the best of these. I can't say without having it really seeing honest tests. It's hard to find honest tests. Everyone says, oh, ours is the best and it works. And I don't believe that. I have to see more data, and I have to see really where they've proven it, etc., independently.
Right. So how
this
does...
is
Sorry.
the problem. No, it's okay. Sorry. Yes.
I was just going to go back to the very beginning. Like we've talked about cancer, how cancer can be encouraged to grow through viruses and bacteria. But what's the seed of cancer, in your opinion?
Well, it's multiple, and that's the thing. I wrote a book called Molecular Alterations in Tumor Promotion in Cancer. It's on Amazon. If anybody can't sleep at night, buy the book. You read the first line, you'll fall asleep. It's all biochemistry. It's very, very complicated. This all fits into tumor promotion, and there are multiple factors that cause cancer. Okay. Some of them are mental, as in stress, depression, etc. There can be, for example, if you have fungus behind your walls in your house and your immune system's shut, which we see a lot in moist areas, and the patients then, their immune systems are weak, and then if we all have mutations in our DNA. It comes and goes, and we usually repair our DNA. If we are under a lot of stress, our cortisol levels are elevated, our immune systems are down. If in addition to that, we're eating a lot of pesticides, our immune systems are shot to hell anyway. And if we are then surrounded by Wi-Fi and also in the cars have a tremendous amount of radiation that's being set out. The new cars, they're worse and worse. I miss my old Volkswagen Beetle, I'll tell you. I knew that was okay. Nothing electronic. It barely ran except on the little motor. I think, it's so multiple. The thing is, John, cancer is such a diverse cause. The water's contaminated. Our water's full of chemicals. We've got like 5,000 chemicals in there. And this is a whole, yeah, really. And the thing is, and people don't filter it, the plastics are estrogen mimetics. So you drink out of a plastic bottle, what do you get? You get BPAs. What are BPAs? These biphenyls that are released from soft plastic are estrogen mimetic, meaning they act like a hormone. All right. What happens to the animals when you feed them BPAs is that the male animals get prostate hyperplasia. So when people go to the movies, and the ones that are getting up all night long are probably drinking plastics, prostate hyperplasia. And the thing is, we also see that it makes a change in the brain, the fetus, and we see that the male fetus brains anatomically look like female fetus brains, which is making me a little nervous about the future of the world. For reproduction, it'll all be in vitro. It's kind of scary, but this is something that I've been watching more and more, and it's all in our waters. And the water laws are just for bacteria. The water laws are not for chemicals. And the FDA allow trace amounts of each. This is the problem of each chemical, okay, or each toxin. But you've got syllogism there, because you've got, instead of, they're measuring one, but if you put all 5 together, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000, you're getting activities that are completely shifting your body, because 70% of our body is water. So if that water is contaminated, you're contaminated. So where does cancer come from? It comes from everywhere. Right. And that's the problem. So how do we get around it? We filter the water, we eat organic foods, we exercise regularly to keep those enzymes up that are important for detoxing and for repairing. And we basically either meditate or do a walk in the woods, or let our brains relax and don't let the stress get to you that you're getting. Then most of these people that I know that are, really heavy duty hard workers, and every day they have stress. They have stress at home, they have stress in their work, their whole life is stress. So it's no wonder their immune systems are a disaster, and they need to learn to let go.
Okay, and of course they've got the cancer in their bodies as well, which is compounding to the stress levels.
Oh, I know. And all you need is a doctor to walk in and say, "Oh, you have cancer. Well, we'll have to do everything to try and turn this around." And then they hit them with chemo, they hit them with radiation, they tell them, "Eat whatever you want." Come on. And then they don't tell them, shut off the Wi-Fi's and don't detox and all of this, because they don't understand where cancer really comes from. This has taken me 40 years and 56 semesters, plus at least 150 to 200 articles a week since 1979 to figure out how the heck cancer works, where it comes from, how we can reverse it. My melanoma patient was cured after 4 months. 4 months. She was given 3 months to live. My breast cancer patient with the brain metastases, when she came back to me after 3 months with her x-ray crying with an angel in her hand, I thought, oh my God, the tumors have grown and she's saying goodbye. And she said, the radiologist said, "I never tell my patients anything, but I've never seen anything like this. Your tumors are all gone." And her tumors were all gone. That's why I started CoLMed, the Foundation for Collaborative Medicine and Research. Why? Because I felt I had a duty to the world to give the information further to other people, even though, alas, it was not a chemical that could make me millions of dollars. It was not something that I could patent. It was knowledge that I could help people with, and I knew I had to give it further. I thought, well, my next life, I'm going to be a mozzarella and lie on the beach in Italy. But this life, I have too much to do, and this is why you never learn enough. So I came into frequencies later. You're way ahead of me. I went into all of the mechanisms, the pharmacology, the molecular pathology, how the biochemistry worked, all of that first. And then I realized, oh my God, there are easier ways to get out of this. We can actually start on frequencies and actually balance out what we're doing so that we can have better efficacy and results for our cancer patients and help them better and faster.
That's right.
That's it.
And frequencies can catalyze reactions, natural reactions within your body. And so it can like a form of symbiosis. Now, when you're talking about frequencies of cancer patients, you're talking about an internal frequency, aren't you? You're not talking about applying frequencies to cancer patients. Yep. So if you can explain that to me, please, a bit more in detail.
Well, the thing is, from what I've been learning on both the chemicals giving off frequencies and the bacteria giving off chemicals and the pathogens and the fungi and so on, all giving off different frequencies. That's why if you just took a pure tumor without any contamination from the human body, like they do in the animals, they keep recycling these things. And, this tumor cell came from a woman 25, 30 years ago. Well, if there's anything in the DNA that it resembles a woman, it's a miracle. It probably more resembles a mouse. And this is why you can treat mice and heal them. Do you know what Judah Folkman said to me, the late Judah Folkman from Harvard? Judah Folkman said to me, if you were a mouse, I could cure you. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, the results we had on blocking the blood vessel growth through inhibiting vascular endothelial growth factor worked in the mice, but never worked in the humans. And he was terribly disappointed. Why didn't it work in the humans? Because the humans have all of these contaminants. And I suspect if we could clean up the contaminants, his compound probably would have worked. But you can exercise and increase inhibition to vascular endothelial growth factor. So patients that exercise regularly, if they can, anything, I don't care whether it's swimming or walking, they actually downregulate the blood vessel growth that would help tumors to metastasize. So by downregulating that through regular exercise, they're actually improving, first of all, their circulation, which is good, but they're creating an anti-cancer effect in their body. Just exercise a little.
Just something so simple as that.
Yeah, well, it also gets rid of the stress. You're out there exercising, you're not thinking about, oh my God, they're going to mob me in the office tomorrow. Right. Or my mother was so mean to me, she never loved me. Let it go. Forgive her, let it go. Move on. Don't dwell on negatives. No, I pick up frequencies on patients, which is really weird. I had this since I broke my neck, and I had a breast tumor when I was 20, and 9 months later I broke my neck and ended up 6 months in the hospital in a striker frame. And after that, I've had this like ability to pick up certain frequencies on patients, and I can't explain it except I'll stand there and I'll suddenly say, you know, is there something in your lower abdomen that's bothering you? And they'll look at me and say, well, they think I have ovarian cancer. And I'm like, oh God, I feel like such a witch. One time I also said that by a patient, I picked up, it was a patient presented in, and I don't, this is all parapsychology combined with quantum physics, in my opinion. It must be a frequency. There was a patient presented by a professor at the university I was at in Germany. Rexta is our technical university, and it was a special elective course in gastroenterology. And since I want to know everything, I always go to all these courses because I want to know everything, right? It's like, okay, well, I only have one life to live. After the broken neck, I want to make as much, I want to learn as much as I can while I'm still alive, because I should have been dead in 1969. So what I ended up, I'm sitting there, and they presented this woman, and they said, well, gastrointestinal pain at Christmas time, horrible. She's 36, she's single. The sonogram was negative, the x-ray was negative, the lab data was negative. Now, there were only 2 of us in the class at this time because the other students had an exam. And my friend Mariola from Poland, who's now a psychiatrist, I said, no. And I felt something under my liver that felt like a cherry stone. And I said, no, it's under her liver. And Mariola looks at me like I'm wacko. And she says, no, she said, you heard it. Everything is negative. There is absolutely nothing. It's psychosomatic. And the professor, after the woman left, said, well, it's obvious she's 36 and she's single. It's obviously a psychosomatic problem because it's Christmas time and she's single and she's alone and all of this except for her parents. You know what happened the next day? I phoned the head of the department. And I called him up and I left a message on his answering machine and said, the patient that was presented by Professor so-and-so yesterday, it isn't psychosomatic, it's under her liver, she has to be examined again. So he calls me up an hour later and says, colleague, calm down. Now this is Germany, right? Colleague, calm down. And I said, he said, we found a stone. Okay, gallstone. They didn't see on the x-ray and the sonogram. And the reason the gallstone showed up at Christmas time was because she was eating goose, which she normally didn't eat because she was thin and stayed away from a lot of fat. She ate all this fat. It blew up her gallbladder and caused all of this colic pain, etc., why she ended up in the hospital. So I said to him, oh, you must be delighted. And Professor H said to me, well, what did he say? Oh, she must be delighted, I said. And he said, I don't know if she's delighted or not, but we are content. And that's what they found. They found a stone. So this is frequencies. Some people have it. And, what you can do with it, only God knows. I prefer to go with something that's already been tested and proven to test out the frequencies from an apparatus where we can then show we know what the frequency is. It's better science. It's more complete. and you can prove whether or not it's affecting the patients by looking at the lab data and so on. So it's an important point.
Right. Now, you've done a lot of study on cancers. What is a tumor? How would you how would you describe a tumor?
I would say a tumor is a growth that's out of control, but
Okay.
it's a growth. That's all you can say. It's a growth. It's something that starts to grow for a need. It can be inflammation. It can be something more pathological, but it's something that is constantly growing. That's where tumor promotion comes in, because you get a lot of tumors that'll go back, they'll reverse, and they're
Okay.
not dangerous.
Okay. Great. Now, this is streaming live. We've got attendees who are asking questions, and Avril has asked a question. She's from the UK. She's talking about stage 1 endometrial cancer, and she's saying about stage 1. Spooky 2 diagnosed the cancer before she went to the doctor, and she used Spooky 2 daily and killed everything that she found. And she kept a log of every frequency that she discovered worked. And if you're interested, Dana, she can give you the data.
Oh, yes. Oh, God bless her. Yes. Tell her she can either write to Colmed she can go online to Colmed for the website and get to me. Or and patients do that if they want a private consultation. Or she can go through my personal email. You may give it to her.
Yes,
The
because
Hotmail one, so that she could, because then we can communicate, and I'll probably give her a call. The thing is, this is extremely important, but it also is important to know that what worked for her may not necessarily work for everyone, because again, we have variations on a theme.
absolutely. But, all knowledge is good knowledge, Dana. So
You can never learn enough. I'm trying to I'll be mentally in some mental institution someday, especially with this whole ability to pick up some of the diseases. I've had symptoms that came to me 12 hours before the patients got them. You try to explain that one. If it hadn't been for witnesses, I said it would have put me in a mental institution and said, that's it, close the door. But the thing is, these frequencies are real. And these frequencies, as you know much better than I do. I am learning about these things now, and only because of the fact that from my own personal story with these nasty little Borrelia that I got, and Morgellons, and they basically said it was a psychosis, and that I was going through a delusional situation because there was nothing there. And I had these welts all over my body, and I had all of these sores and bumps, and they hurt, and it was horrible. And so I ended up having to research myself to find out about this and more about this. And just like when a patient, and God bless them all, I am sorry for anybody that has any kind of disease, but you know what? There's a reason for it. And the reason that this woman got the endometrial cancer and ended up being able to reverse it all with the frequencies was because she needed to learn about this, and we needed to learn from her. So every single patient is a teacher, because every single patient has their own story, and these stories can help to save other lives. And that's exactly what she'll be doing with this information. And this is what I can help her with and learn from my work, and also help teach colleagues, so that we can have, perhaps in the future, basic parameters of even a booklet or internet book, where hopefully it won't be blocked by pharmaceutical companies, where we can give out the frequencies so that we can let our colleagues and all those and patients that are using the Spooky 2, let them know which programs are best designed for their particular situation. But they also have to realize that there should also be a gray area where it might be also Epstein-Barr, or it might also be, so they can start with the basics and see how they're doing, and then to add on depending on what the results are. And I think it's brilliant. It's really beyond. I would say this is, you're at rocket science. I'm out in the fields. I'm still out in the fields growing my plants and reversing cancer slowly. But you all are way ahead. And if we combine these things, I think that there's hardly a cancer you can't cure except for one that is emotionally caused.
Okay. But then again, you know, if one has support, then hopefully those can as well. There's a website, spooky2testimonials.com, where people get together. Well, we've collected all these testimonials together. So people can search on that website and see what worked for other people and apply
Right.
those methodologies within
Well,
methodologies.
yeah, but you have to be careful in that. That's where I'm concerned a little bit about the fact that if you have one patient whose cancers were caused from pesticides and parasites, and then you have another patient whose cancers were caused more from stress and heavy metals, you have to also realize that there are variations for each type of cancer. There are basics. I would say from my work over all these years, 60% of cancers have the basic molecular pathology. 60%. That's why there are certain nutrients that are for everybody, absolutely everybody. And this is why it's really important to look at these things and be able to put this together. That's why I want this book out. I want people to know, okay, this is the basics that you take. Boom. All right. And this is what you look for variations on a theme. And for those patients who have either access to Spooky 2 or they have a naturopath or a doctor that has a Spooky 2 or a friend who has a Spooky 2 that can help do the programming, and then through your work, and then this basic support and the general detox, that I would say probably you can reverse 90% of all cancers.
Right. Wow. Now, Ali's asked the question twice, so you better give him an answer. He's asking about iodine, the Lugol solution, 5% or similar. He's asking whether that would be beneficial for breast cancer or prostate cancer. Do you give iodine as a supplement in any of your patients?
Actually, that's a good question. And the work that I've looked at in iodine, I looked at the Magnicent iodine. It's a nascent iodine that's more effective. I haven't been able to get it in Europe, but in UK you can order from the US. Magnicent, Magnascent. I prefer that over the Lugol solution. Our thyroids, this is interesting. This comes in Chinese medicine, and since you're at the source here, my colleague Dr. Lim in Hong Kong says that when you're stressed, the adrenals take from the kidneys take from the liver, and the liver takes from the thyroid. So once you find out you have a cancer, immediately everyone tries to scare the daylights out of you. Basically, the hospitals want your money, and you're a paycheck for them. So they scare you even more. So you'll do all of these expensive tests, et cetera, and expensive therapies, which is a horror. But basically speaking, the thyroid is definitely affected, and it's affected from the stress. So I'm learning more about Chinese medicine after having studied everything in Western medicine to realize, oh my gosh, there really is a whole balance in our body, and there are chakras and meridians and so on that go through our body that acupuncture works through almost a black hole. That's what Dr. Lim says. I agree with him that there's special pathways there. They're probably frequency pathways. I wouldn't be surprised at all, because we are, what do they say, the electronic man or something? Becker wrote. And Robert there's something, what, pardon?
Robert Becker.
Yeah, exactly, Robert Becker. And I definitely feel that, the electromagnetic fields in our body are all working together, and we're completely messing up our electromagnetic fields, first of all, because of what we're surrounded by. And I'm sitting here in front of a computer, so I should talk. But the Wi-Fi's, there are supposedly ways of shutting down the toxicities of the Wi-Fi, or the stimulation, I should say, for tumor growth. In Los Alamos, Dr. Abramoff showed that frequencies, certain terahertz, can actually stimulate tumor growth. And when I read that, I was like, oh my God, we know it can stimulate parasite growth. That's old data. And this is why a lot of people that work in offices surrounded by all of this electromagnetic fields, and everybody's on the cell phone, they're much higher, at a higher risk for, if they have parasites, for them to grow probably a lot of the bacteria and to get cancer. And so this is something where, I don't know what the answer is here. We're all going for convenience, but what are we doing to our entire electromagnetic fields in our body? What are the frequencies in our own bodies now doing? Because we're messing them up.
All this, you're talking about organic foods and Wi-Fi. I think none of these things were around 100 years ago. And so we're really talking about life back to the basics again, where communication was by word of mouth or by print, and not by electronic means. So
Thank God for Google. I call it Dr. Google. Dr. Google has a lot of lies, false information, stupidity, general information. But once you ferret through all of the details and you get down to the real basic facts, and especially if you have a background where you can filter out what's best and what's real, that's where it's amazing what I've been able to find on the internet. I mean, it's just some of the ancient, you're right, the old things that they did. Look, they took some of the wood ash and they used that. Wood ash, what's it? It's full of minerals and it has a little bit of lye in it, so it kills out a lot of the parasites and pesticides. They used to use tobacco as a pesticide. They do it in India still because it's cheap and it gets rid of the pests. There are so many things. They use dust in England. My cousin told me this. Oh, she said, yeah, we use something like rock dust. We used to throw it on the vegetables, and it closes the pores off in the pests, but it doesn't hurt the plants. And I have a friend that was doing this in South America, in Paraguay, had his own company, but he said, it was so expensive to ship the stuff because it was so heavy that people instead just went to a cheap liquid pesticide and ended up just killing everything, including the ground and the microbes and everything else. So it's convenience. Convenience is killing us.
Yeah, that's the modern world that we live in. I was going through some of the questions that have been asked by our viewers. Is a tumor and cancer the same thing?
No. A tumor is merely a growth. It can reverse. You get rid of the stimulus, you can reverse it. Maybe the stimulus is a parasite, you don't know. But a tumor cell has a different pathology, and the histology of the tumor cell shows a total difference in the mitochondria. They overgrow. You see all these mitochondria that are really aggressively helping that tumor to grow, and that's when it's irreversible. And that was in my cancer book when I came upon an enzyme called ornithine decarboxylase, ODC. And ornithine decarboxylase is an enzyme that helps to regulate DNA synthesis. It does not go back in cancer cells, but it does go back in normal cells when the stimulus is taken away. And this really opened my eyes to a lot. And as the years went on, I found out that the products that ornithine decarboxylase make actually help to open up DNA and lock it into place for replication. So they also, the products, spermine and spermidine, also shift a ratio in the tumor cells. There's a ratio in the tumor cells for what I call the good guys, the bad guys, or stop and go. So stop is reversed by this enzyme, by these polyamines, they call them, spermine and spermidine, and go is activated. So you get the cyclic AMP going nuts, and it's, or the cyclic GMP, I'm sorry, G for growth. Cyclic GMP is growing, 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 growing. If you can stop the ornithine decarboxylase, in many cases you can reverse it. But sometimes it's so advanced that they have all these bypass pathways. And that's why I have to use combination therapies. And that's why I often use off-label drugs. In fact, almost always now, because I know that these other pathways are playing a role there. We want to knock them out too. Every time and this is the problem with chemotherapy. In chemotherapy, they have one goal, one substance, or one enzyme that they hit, okay? And it works for a while because that enzyme is playing a role in this cancer. But it's not playing a role in every single tumor cell within the cancer. So after a while, it doesn't work and they find a bypass. These little cells are smart. They know how to mutate and to find a new pathway to grow. It's kind of like trying to keep a mouse out of your house. If you don't block every single hole, they're going to get in there, and they will. They're all coming in now, I'm sure.
Now, one thing I've often wondered about, and I know other people have as well, if cancer is a pathogen, for a pathogen to survive, it must go from host to host. Is cancer in any form contagious, or can it continue its mutation in different hosts?
It's a very, very good question. That was asked back in the 30s when my mother studied medicine. And they found out that if you have blood from a cancer patient directly, yes, not by general contact, not by sexual contact, but by blood. There are bacteria in the blood that can be transferred, and this is what my mother's friend found. She was doing a PhD. She was an MD doing a PhD, and this is what she found, that you could actually transfer it in the animals, which was a nightmare of a discovery for the rest of us, which really makes you wonder. We know that these bacteria can cause cancer. We know that just from some of the pathogens for tree tumors. That's where some of this original work started. They looked at tree tumors, and they found out that there were pathogens in these tree tumors. And they then found out that there were bacteria. Basically, the medical community just about destroyed the people that said there's a pathogen there. There's a bad guy there. There's a bacteria or virus that's in there that can actually cause these cancers. Now, this was decades ago, and we're finding now, I mean, the SV40 virus and some of the viruses that are in the vaccines, not good news, because they came from the monkeys, and they had all the monkeys together in the cages, and the monkeys picked up viruses from other monkeys, and we ended up having the vaccines with little teeny tiny viruses that you couldn't even see. They went through the filters. And so in order to immunize, they ended up getting bad viruses along with the good viruses that you wanted to immunize with. So these are other complications that have arisen. Yes, it can be contagious, but not from direct contact, not from drinking out of a glass, not from sexual contact, but from blood it can be transferred. Yes, we also know hepatitis. One of my colleagues was working with, somebody just arrived at the gate. One of my colleagues was working at a laboratory with hepatitis, and she spilled some blood on her hand. And guess what? It went right through the membrane. She didn't even realize she had any scratches there, and it opened it up, and she got hepatitis. And so we know that from direct blood. And I don't know about transfusions, how good the transfusions are to eliminate something like this. From the data I've seen, no. It appears to be that patients have not had a higher incidence of cancer after transfusions. However, that blood's cleaned. And the thing is, if someone injures themselves and they're bleeding, I would say, and you have to also even be careful with the gloves in the emergency room. A cancer patient is bleeding, cuts himself or herself, et cetera, they need double gloves at least, because some of these pathogens can actually get through the latex.
Wow.
And that's kind of scary. And it's kind of like, okay, but we know that, just general, it's not a contagious factor. And then there's so many other factors involved anyway.
Right. As cancer, if you like, develops in a person's body, it can mutate and become more refined and better able to do it, to grow. But what is the benefit to the pathogen? Because when the person dies, they'll take the pathogen with them. So how does the evolution work in this case?
That's a good question. I'd like to tell the pathogen in my body that if they kill me, then they're not going to be around anymore. So they better destroy me. That's a very good question, and it's something that I've often thought of myself, to think, why would they want to kill you? Yes. Actually, they don't think. So they don't think that far. They just want to replicate and continue on replicating. And as long as they can continue on replicating, they're happy in your body. But they don't, a pathogen doesn't have the ability to know once the host is dead, they're gone.
But the fact of the matter is they do exist. And so they must have had a way of moving between hosts for them to develop to the advanced stage where they can infect hosts.
That's a that's the $1 million question right there. And we know that there are certain bacteria that actually do get into the body and do cause cancer. And these are the ones that Dr. Enderlein found, Dr. Livingston found. Linus Pauling and I flew out to California in 1980. We had this huge argument. It was a riot. Bless his little heart. I kept telling him, you can't give 20 grams a day orally. You can't do that because it's too dangerous and you'll only absorb 3 grams anyway. And if you're going to give high vitamin C, you should give it infusion, but certainly not orally because it can activate hydrogen peroxide. Now that's great if you're giving infusions and you want to increase the oxygen in the tumor cells. It's not enough alone, but it definitely is a help. But I didn't know that his wife, he had been telling her to take 20 grams of vitamin C a day, and she ended up with stomach cancer. So he flipped out at me, screaming and yelling, this isn't true, this isn't true. And I said, sure, Larry Oberle proved it. And he showed that hydroperoxide's increased from vitamin C. And so we suspect that she may have had Helicobacter pylori in her stomach too, but she ended up with stomach cancer and dying of stomach cancer. So this was a man who was ready to strangle me on the spot for being right. I apologize, Linus, wherever you are up there. I had no idea. And somebody said to me, shut up, Dana, shut up. And I said, what's the matter? And they said, his wife died of stomach cancer. I said, oh my God, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. I just have felt terrible. But the thing is, this is why you have to really know everything. And how these pathogens, it's a real good question. We saw them under the microscope. We don't know how they get into people's body, or whether or not they're in our bodies anyway, and that they mutate with the proper environment. Do you see what I mean? Like the guy in the church who's good in church and goes to the red light district and he's not so good anymore. Well, the pathogens, when they get the right environment, and what is the right environment? The immune system goes down, the acid goes up, the cortisol levels go up, the stress goes up, the emotional aspects go up, and they really shift. Visualizing can actually help tremendously in reversing cancers, because it helps you relax, and it helps you to work on an area that's actually in quantum physics, which is new to me. I'm learning more and more about quantum physics as I go along, because I was wondering, how the heck could I pick up the symptoms for my patients? Or how would I know when somebody was suddenly ill? Or how would I know the whole day that my daughter something was going to happen to her, and then that evening she broke her arm? Well, actually the au pair broke her arm, which is really a shock, but that's another story. The point is, these frequencies and these energies are there, but once we start shifting these frequencies in our body, then what happens is we allow pathogens, whether they're endogenous, I don't know, or whether they're exogenous and you ate something full of bacteria or H. pylori or something else. We don't know exactly what these pathogens are. We do see them, as I said, under the doctrine microscope. I would love to get the frequencies from these little critters, because I think that would be an absolute breakthrough in the future. And this is something that, as I said, you see them on the doctrinal microscope. There's no doubt about it that they're there, and there's no doubt about it that they decrease as the patient gets better. So if we can pick up these frequencies, perhaps some of them think they're life forces. Some of them think that Dr. Livingston thought they were at the head of a sperm and they were part of life to help for replication and regeneration. That because we are symbiotic, our mitochondria are former E. coli. And so we have merged over millions and millions of years, where the bacteria became part of us, where certain viruses became part of us, not as pathogens, but actually as part of our whole system. And so it's not a surprise to me that these pathogens may not really have been pathogens in the beginning, but as we changed our environment in our body, as we became more toxic, with more acidity, with more stress, that they then could shift over to a pathogenic form. So the good guy turning bad guy. And that's where diet, nutrition, meditation, just letting go alone helps. And it also helps tremendously when the patients know, when they're told in advance, frequencies play a role in cancer, and they know that they're helping their bodies. That is a tremendous asset in itself, because the emotional aspect of a disease, I've seen colleagues walk into patients and say, oh, you only have 3 months to live. And guess what? They died in 3 months, practically to the day. Why? Because they had it programmed in their brain that they're going to die. And this is the thing. And I remember that the patient with the melanoma, when she said to me, but they said, I'm going to die, there's nothing they can do. And I said, come on, of course there is. There's always something. As one professor said to me, there's always a treatment. You just have to find it. The finding it has taken me over 40 years, and I can't tell you how many hundreds of thousands of articles over all these decades that I've read in order to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And it's actually, on the one hand, it's simple. On the other hand, it's extremely complicated. And that's why when you're doing frequencies, you've got to know that there are other factors. Most important, always fungal. Always hit the fungal. You have to, because that
Okay.
really is a factor in them. And then the other factors, there's energy medicine where they can test for some of these things. I'm a little wary because I'm also a classical doctor, and so I look for blood tests. However, the patient with the gallstone had everything negative, and I felt her gallstone, and she had a gallstone. So sometimes you almost have to go intuitively in order to be able to find something. Or they say, if you look long enough, you'll find it. And that's it. Some people just don't look long enough. My colleagues with my Morgellons or Lymes or Borrelia, whatever you want to call it, looked at these things and said it's nothing but fuzz from clothes. My daughter, who's a PhD magna cum laude from the German Cancer Research Center, said, Mom, it's on your head. It's on your head, Mom. There's nothing there. They're all gone. I said, no, I feel like something biting me all the time, all night long. She said, Mom, you're just paranoid. Finally, I find data only because I never give up. I always research and research and research until I find an answer. I drive myself nuts. I mean, I have a patient for an hour or an hour and a half consultation, and I put in at least 15 hours more to find out what else could there be, what other things, what's new, what can affect this, et cetera, et cetera. Does the sea urchin really do something in breast cancer? I don't know. One of my patients took it, so what do? And she's now well. I looked it up. I look at the mechanisms, the pharmacology, what are the most effective substances we need, and I pretty much narrowed it down to a handful, because otherwise they say, Doc, I can't sit there and take pills all day long, which is true. A lot of them can, and it upsets their stomach, and it changes their program, and every time they travel, they've got a suitcase full of pills, and I'm like, no, it's got to be easier, which is why I love Spooky too, because it is easier. And if we can even simplify it more, where they can carry something on their body where it's constantly letting off these frequencies, and they do this a couple hours every day, plus lots of water, then they can set it on the one program to get the tumor, and then they can reset it on another program to reprogram in the nutrients. And you've got the best of both worlds there.
What we found is that the larger we become, the more other companies don't like us, because we try and do things for the right reason rather than just chasing the big dollars. So they sort of spread their rumors to try and sort of stifle our growth and try and cause damage. But we're so big, and people are coming. They're wise. They read other people's reviews of us and what we've done, and they come to realize.
Well, the thing is, you're first of all, you're on the right path. You have the right attention. And to let you know about greed, I was so fed up last fall and winter at Wall Street, and how the Wall Street greed is destroying the economy and everything in the world. I mean, they're supporting the pesticides, they're supporting the chemicals, they're supporting everything that's killing us, and they don't care whether or not they sell weapons and kill somebody, because then they make money. And the thing is, I'm seeing this all over the world. So I wrote a musical. It's finished now. It's copyrighted. It's called Greed with 3 E's, and it's a comedy musical. Fortunately, with a happy ending. I hope life will be. But the bad guy in the ending will end up getting caught trying to control all the gold in the world. His name's Siggy Goldschleim. Siggy Goldschleim to control all the gold in the world. And there are 2 very honest people, his secretary and the mail boy, who's actually an IT genius, who knows everything about computers, but he stutters, and so nobody gave him a decent job, but he's brilliant. And it's a love story in combination with Ziggy, and there's songs in it. There's one song in it that's called "I Never, 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 Ever Get Enough," and that's Ziggy singing with his wife, and she wants a new Bentley, et cetera, and another house in the Hamptons. And there's another song sung by 3 investment bankers who are absolute crooks. They look like the guys in Suits, and except for the fat guy. And he's trying to look like the guy in the Suits, but he's so fat and half bald that he can't get away with it. And they sing a song called The Golden Rule. And the golden rule is, do it to others before they do it to you. So that's our world. I hope we get we need I've got the songs written, but I don't have the music written. So we're looking for a composer for this and an investor. And I found a man he's worth about $5 billion, and he's amazing. He's brilliant, and he sued Goldman Sachs and won. So I haven't presented him with greed yet, but I'm going to, if I go down to Monaco and meet with him, he will finally get a copy of Greed. I'm hoping he gets a kick out of it, because I got so fed up. I was often on Wall Street with companies, entrepreneurial companies, presenting new information. And since I'm fascinated by all kinds of technology, whether it's a new type of a windmill or a new type of energy, or whether it's Tesla energy, a friend of mine's head of the Aspen Institute out in Colorado. I want to get my own generator, actually a Tesla generator. I said, I know how to do it. And he's already done it. So I said, okay, well, I wanted to move to Ireland, so I need to have some house out in the countryside so I could do my own electricity, because otherwise I'll be paying through the nose. I know it. And it's amazing, because the more you look at things in the world and look at systems, I look at systems. The more you look at systems, the more you see parallels. And you see parallels in these systems, just like looking at Bonnie, what's her name, from Princeton's data on the chemicals that these bacteria were releasing to pull in more chemicals, pull in more bacteria. And I know that the stem cells do the same thing. So I have a frequency that will pull in stem cells, okay? That's why I need to talk to somebody confidentially so that we can discuss this to see, because I think for healing, this would be fantastic. So you've got different variations on a theme. You've got one where you can actually help to kill off or reverse the pathogens in the body. And that's important in everything, number one. Number two, in cancer, it's even more important that you get rid of these pathogens, because they are promoting the tumor growth. And the rest is from diet, nutrition, nutrients, etc., and keeping toxins, pathogens, and chemicals out of our body so that our body can heal itself. Our body can heal itself. This is something that we already know from people that swim in the Ganges, and they're convinced they're not going to get sick. There's so many bacteria in there that one professor said it's unbelievable that everybody isn't sick, and they're always bathing in it. But in their head, they know that the gods are helping them. This is why the mental aspect of a disease is just as important as all of the other parameters that we use to heal a person and help them to reverse their cancers. They have to want to reverse their cancers. I lost a 31-year-old girl who did not want to live. She did not want to live. She was mobbed throughout high school. I could not get it turned around. And I said, God, if we could only do hypnosis or anything, how do you get a person to want to live? Or the patient who was left by their parents, or abandoned, or beaten, or abused, or whatever, and then they marry somebody that's the same type, etc. And then they're either left by them or abused by them, and they can't take it anymore, and they check out. They're in a situation where it's so horrible. I wish I had a clinic that I could just pay for them to come, have them be treated, etc., to get away from this toxic source that's actually leading to their disease. But as far as what we can do, we can clean up probably 85 to 90% of the pathological causes of the cancer. But the emotional causes of the cancer is a whole other story. That's going to be a chapter in my book on emotions. And I have to say, even though I have 5 years of psychology, I never realized how important the mental aspect was in a disease. It's just as important as the pathogens. And the pathogens, once you reverse those, then if you get the mental aspect, very often, once the patients start to see, A, they're feeling better, B, the tumors are getting smaller, they have hope, then this negative stops. And then they can also help to work with the frequencies for their own frequencies from their brain to say, okay, we're getting well. We're getting well.
Okay. Ali has just asked a good question. Can different insects pass on pathogens that can induce cancers?
Bingo. That's $1 million question. You're absolutely, yes. I mean, obviously there are many things. I mean, whether you have malaria, some of my African patients, or people that have traveled to South America, Africa, many of the viruses, many of the parasites, etc., come in through and not just through contaminated water, but through bites and things. I mean, I'm a perfect example. I'm sitting here fighting off with 50,000 antibiotics, and I can't wait to hook up my spooky too. And I was bitten viciously by bird mites that invaded my apartment from the balcony because I had all these pigeons coming and eating out of the bird feeder, and the pigeons carry these Morgellons, which I didn't know either. I knew nothing about it. They found it on cows, and that's how they found out that these things even existed, and they came from the pigeons that were living in the barn, and their coat would fall on the cows, etc., etc. These beasts bit the hell out of me and gave me Borrelia. I mean, I was never bitten by a tick, and I was bitten mercilessly for over a month and a half until these creatures finally died off. But by then they had already given me the Borrelia. Absolutely, absolutely. Whether it's from a mosquito, we're finding more and more viruses coming in from mosquitoes, whether it's from a tick, whether it's from a worm that gets into you that's carrying something else. Even the Borrelia from the ticks are carrying Bartonella and Babibiosa parasites. So you've got a whole chain reaction going there. And yes, just about anything that can bite you can do this. And a woman said to me the other day, she said, "Oh, don't hug me, you might be contagious." And I said, "No, I'm only contagious if I bite you."
Let's hope it didn't go that far.
But it's amazing that, yes, he's absolutely correct. And many of these cancer pathogens, see, once they get in the body, if your immune system's really good, and you're not under stress and you're eating right, et cetera, very often they don't affect us. But if your immune system's shot and you're weak and you're contaminated, yes, he's right.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, well, everyone, we're talking to Dana Flavin, expert on everything except for hypnosis, I've discovered now. But I guess you'll be looking into that shortly. You've done. What haven't you done? You've made a musical? Really? You've written a musical?
Yes, we need a composer. Come on, guys, it's a comedy musical about greed. It's funny. The woman that is my co-writer that did the script for me just won first prize for her short movie at Woodstock. So she's a very good writer, and she was recommended by a producer in California. And I said, I want a movie. I want Danny DeVito to play Ziggy Goldschleim, the greedy gold hungry who wants to control all the gold in the world. And sounds like the Coen brothers. And I want Meryl Streep to be his wife, Svetlana. And I said, I already have the players in this whole scene. And it's very funny. It's crazy funny. But I thought to myself, I can't beat them. This whole everything, all of these big companies and Goldman Sachs and thousands of others and all the Wall Street people, there's so much greed that they're destroying our world. They're destroying us, and they don't care. So what could be a better revenge than to make fun of them? Because that's how it should be. Like Charlie Chaplin, you just, in the Great Dictator, if you can't beat them, make fun of them. And so I thought to myself, then we need to laugh at them, because then we will deflate what they think they are important. They're not. We are.
Now you've touched on frequencies within the body. There's frequencies in the whole universe, and I've just seen evidence of this happening now. One of our viewers, Mike, he's a professional composer, and he's also a professional keyboardist for over 40 years. So I think we've joined two.
Have him get in touch with me. Give him my personal email. That's fine. That would be fun. We'll see what he does. I talked to Andrew Lloyd Webber and Yestin. Yestin did 9. Both of them are up to their wazoos. Andrew Lloyd Webber is writing his memoirs. I said, you're too young to write your memoirs. You're not dead yet. And so Yestin is, he's kind of avoiding me, but I said, well, maybe not. So we don't know yet. It's all up for grabs. It depends on what people write. We've also talked to 50 Cent, Curtis, who we want him to do the rap song. The rap song is, you got to go where the money goes. Got to go where the money goes. And this is how the world is thinking. The world is thinking, go where the money goes. I say follow the money, and you know who the crooks are. I mean, that's it. It's pretty simple. But it's okay. But have them get in touch with you. That would be great. The thing is, we have to clean up our world. Both I think in our intentions and not sticking our head in the sand and ignoring it. Many people are just happy living from day to day with their little contentment, but not looking around to see what can we do to really help the whole world and the universe. By the way, hug a tree. If you hug a tree, an oak tree, the frequencies, the negative frequencies from your body will just wash out. It's amazing. Wood. You know,
Did I say something? I'm just wondering. When you said that, I was just no. Without a word of a lie, the thought in my mind was, "Where is the nearest oak tree?"
Right. Oh, absolutely. When I used to study at the university, I used to lean against an oak tree to study. I still can see the pictures of the pages that I was reading. I have a photographic memory. It's kind of weird. My daughter does too. It's like I would sit there in an exam and just stare up in space, and the professor would say, "What are you doing?" And I would say, "I'm pulling in the pages." I said, "What?" I'm sorry. I don't know. I think it's a broken neck. I think that that's what finally then did all of this weird stuff with me, because I had grand mal seizures when I was 16. And then the breast tumor, which wasn't so bad, except they didn't have to do a radical mastectomy. It was fibroadenoma. And then 9 months later, the broken neck. So 6 months in a hospital in a striker frame with screws in my head probably did something to screw up my brain so that I can pick up these frequencies from other people. And this is probably why I ended up now at this point in my life finding out, damn, frequencies can cure you. And I'm like, wow, you got to be kidding. Why didn't we learn any of this in medicine? How come nobody told us any of this? Where's Rife? Why didn't I meet him? Well, actually, I was too young. But Rife, I mean, I wonder, how did he know this? Do these people channel? Do they just suddenly have this information? Because it's absolutely exceptional. And I've heard of people that had frequencies recorded for many, many different things who were suddenly eliminated, and so be careful. And that was supposedly they had a massive heart attack after having a dinner with a drug company. So I don't know what to think. But I figured, you know, if you can program some of these frequencies in, I make face creams too on the side. Okay, I started it when I started my 3rd doctorate, and I thought, oh shoot, I'm older than all these kids. And so I started making face creams, and I wanted to program in. I still want to program in. That's why I need these frequencies. Stem cell activation, because we should be able to just regenerate the entire body and face through activation of the stem cells. You can already do it with blueberries. I gave a talk on this, by the way, on regeneration and how you can regenerate your body. The problem is a lot of this stuff that can regenerate your body and activate your stem cells is now toxic because of the pesticides, or it's GMOs. So soya helps to protect your stem cells and activate them. Blueberries do too, but if they're all sprayed or GMOs, how the heck are we even going to regenerate anymore? I mean, this is like you could eat a decent good meal in the olden days without pesticides and all the toxins, and you go to sleep at night when it was dark and you didn't have Wi-Fi around or anything else. You didn't have the stress, except, you know, I got to get up and milk the cows in the morning, and that was it. And so nowadays we're just surrounded by everything, and I'm sitting there thinking, how are we going to turn this world around in order to make it a place for our children to live and thrive? How are they going to thrive? What are we leaving them? We're leaving them so many plastics in the ocean that they're completely contaminated with so many chemicals. They're all abbreviations. There's so many that it's ridiculous. The whales are not reproducing anymore because the sperm is being blocked by a lot of these chemicals in the water. We're finding mutations, over feminization of the animals in the woods that are drinking out of the streams. We're finding flame retardant in breast milk in California. I mean, how the heck did I get in there? And so all of these toxins are coming more and more and more into our bodies. So we can't just live. We have to live defensively. And that's why I think a good cleaning regularly, and if we can do it with frequencies, fantastic. But we also have to be consciously aware of what are we drinking, what are we eating. And we didn't have to be this way. Just go out and grab a sandwich. And now it's, where'd the meat come from? Is the cow injected with antibiotics? Are there GMOs in this? Was the cow fed pesticides and GMOs in the corn? Was the corn GMO corn also sprayed with glyphosate just to make sure it dried properly? Where are we? And I don't know what the answer is. I can only tell you we can reverse diseases, we can reverse cancers. Frequencies will be playing more and more of a major role in our patients in general. But the patients have to also be aware that they have to be conscious of what's around them and what they're doing themselves, so that they can work with the frequencies with us, so that we can help to reverse all these diseases. And it's not impossible. Sounds like rocket science, but and it is in a way if you go into physics. And the physics was, for me, I hated physics. I will be perfectly honest, I hated physics until I figured out that structure affects frequencies, and found out that the structure in the DNA can change depending on the biochemistry influencing the structure, which could change the frequencies in the DNA and shift the DNA to replicate or stop. And that's where I have an article on it, but I have to get it published, but I haven't gotten anybody to publish it yet. They probably think I'm crazy. The Russians have helped me on this a lot in physics, with the bubbles. The DNA breathes. It has bubbles going up and down, like the lungs, and it's oscillating all the time, like the heart. So it's basically lungs and heart together in this form, and it's because of the form of the DNA that it can move, that it can oscillate, and all those trace minerals, the ones that come from carrots, right? The ones that come from shilajit, right? They are in there and help to set up pathways in there, frequency pathways in the DNA. So this is where it's like, my God, the whole world is frequencies. I didn't know this before, but once I got into this with the DNA and realized, oh my God, I'll send you the article if you're interested. It's a little complicated, but it's fascinating to see how the DNA is working through the biochemistry, is influencing the structure is influencing the activity in the DNA. And that's where I wrote this in a poem in 1980 called Cancer's Esoteris. And it was little puffs on chromosomes where NHPs, that's non-histone proteins, seem right at home, make changes that are strictly tertiary. I think of NHPs, we should be wary. From cytoplasms, they will always roam to little puffs upon the chromosomes. And then I found out that these non-histone proteins and enzymes changed the structure of the DNA, opened up the DNA, allowed it to divide. And I was like, oh my God, why didn't I see this? I've got goosebumps already. Why didn't I see this before? It all works together. The biochemistry influences structure, the structure influences the frequencies. And so this is where either you kill off the parasite with toxins, if you don't kill yourself, like I'm doing right now with all the antibiotics, or, and this is why I can't wait to get my spooky tube hooked up, or you start to destroy them with another method, and that way with frequencies, it's safer. You don't have the side effects. You have to constantly detox anyway. I mean, you should, regardless of what you're doing, whether you're taking antibiotics or you're doing frequencies, you must constantly be drinking pure water, not distilled, has to be filtered, well filtered. Reverse osmosis is the best. And then the frequencies can actually help to clear up your body, but you can't just do it once. It's not like, oh, I have a headache, I'll take an aspirin and that's it. It's a series, because you have to slowly get rid of them. You can't get rid of them all at once. Your body can't handle it. That's why when you blast a tumor with chemo, I mean, oh my God, and you're so sick from the chemo, but you're also sick from all those toxins, because they're suddenly free and they're all over your body. And the doctors say, oh, well, that's a normal side effect of chemo. And I'm like, yeah, right. You know, why don't they learn? Why don't the colleagues learn? There's so much out there, and we can save lives. And I mean, you guys are already doing it, but this is where I want to help you in order to help the patients and help everybody else, so that we work together at a level that is academically, intellectually, scientifically proven and solid, and not just hearsay.
Right. Now, we do encourage shameless plugs for books. You say you've got published books already. If you can tell us how we can find them, please.
All right. Well, the one that's already on there that is too complicated is called Molecular Alterations in Tumor Promotion and Cancer. That's strictly the science behind it. That's like took 5 years to write the darn thing. The new one, I've decided I'm going to call it Secrets of a Cancer Healer, and I'll tell you why. Because I've been too humble, and it's like you can't just say, cancer reversing. One of my patients wrote The Cancer Whisperer. She was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer about 3 years ago. And she did a consultation with me and sat there so forlorn and said, well, I'm on palliative now. They said they can't do anything anymore. I've got brain metastases and I've got non-small cell lung cancer, and it's at stage 4. And I said to her husband, well, let's get her well. And she looked at me as if I had 2 heads. And the tumor reversed.
Yes.
She became a famous writer. She's got the Cancer Whisperer in all these different languages. Unfortunately, she doesn't say anything about what she did. She only talks about her emotional journey, which is important for people that are going through emotional journeys with cancer. But I said, gee, Sophie, why don't we work together and put one out where she said, because the publisher doesn't want that. They want something that appeals as a story. They don't want something that's how to reverse your cancer book, like a cookbook. And it is like a cookbook. Hell, it's worked in so many patients. I finally got it perfected after 40 years, and I can reverse just about every cancer except the emotionally caused ones. And that they get rid of the tumors, but very often then something else comes because they're not healed emotionally.
Right.
But all the other cancers, I mean, I can't tell you how many stage 4 I've had. In fact, right now I've got to get my melanoma CD back from my colleague because I wanted photos from it. I wanted to copy the before and after with the metastases all over and then all gone to put on the website, and my colleague still hasn't returned my CD. They're probably copying all of my treatments, but who cares? That's why I want to get the book out for the colleagues too, because why should our patients around the world suffer just because of ignorance? This is ridiculous. I said 3 things kill: greed, ego, and ignorance. And they're usually together.
That's quite profound. It's quite true when I think about it, which takes a bit of time normally. Yes, it's quite profound. People that I see that are very sick, that do go downhill, they've got the mindset that there's no hope, and they haven't got much energy inside them. They've sort of given up on hope. And they're the ones that fail. But the people that really fight and do the research and find out, what to do to get better and fight, they're the ones that survive. They're the survivors. So when you do get your book finished, I definitely want to buy a copy. So please promise me whilst we're on air that you'll send me the...
Yeah, we're trying. We've got some funding now. We've got to make sure we have enough funding for an editor, and then I'm going to have to probably take off 3 months and work with her or him on the editing on it. As far as greed goes, that's out of my hands now. It's copyright. I just need the composer to go ahead and help me out. So help me out on that, and then we can see about getting that out. If that gets out, I said the whole purpose of this is to make fun of the greed in the world, but to support the foundation so that we can help save patients' lives. Patients that can't afford anything. I mean, I've had some of the worst cases. Do you know that in 1993, I had a patient from Ireland with a cervical cancer the size of a grapefruit, and I wasn't treating then. I had, I was still working on my MD, and my friends in Ireland said, "For God's sakes, Dana, you're always reading. Do something." And I'm like, oh God, gosh, do something. Okay, well, I finished the book on molecular alterations and tumor promotion, but who cares? Found out about vitamin A and D and this and that. I treated her for 6 months, and unbeknownst to my ex-husband, I was paying for her treatments and sending money every month to Ireland because she was living in the countryside without electricity with her 12-year-old son. She was actually on welfare. And so I bought her a juicer. I paid for all her nutrients. We did an actual topical with a tampon on the tumor. And in 6 months, it was completely gone. And I was so relieved, first of all, because I was paying thousands every month to send off everything. Not thousands. I mean, it runs to about 800, I guess, and then with all the extra goodies and stuff. But that was the first time in 1993 that I saw that only natural stuff, there were no off-label drugs, could actually reverse a cancer. And then 6 months later, I had a patient with a colon cancer with liver, lung, and lymph metastases. And my colleague with whom I had done a rotation in surgery calls me up 3 months later and says, Dana, I operated on hair S on Christmas Eve. It's now April 1st. And he had liver, lung, and lymph metastases. And we gave him 6 months to live, and it's 3 months later, there's no more cancer.
Wow.
And he said, how did you do it? And I said, Werner, it's biochemistry. It's absolute biochemistry. That's a lovely lady who's putting up with me until my apartment is livable, and I'm still trying to get the frequencies out of my bedroom. So if you guys have any suggestions, I am dusting everything. I am spraying with M bacteria. I'm still picking them up at certain places around the bed where the thousands of bird mites were. And it's amazing, because if I'm in the living room, we've all cleaned the whole thing. There's nothing there. You go into that other room and you pick up the frequencies. So these frequencies are real. And if anybody thinks they're not real, believe me, they're real. And we see them from testing, how frequencies can stimulate tumor growth. I don't know if the frequencies from the parasites stimulate the tumor growth, or they're just being released and the parasites themselves are stimulating the tumor growth. My gut feeling is their frequencies are helping to stimulate the tumor growth. And this is why this whole work is so brilliant and fascinating, that it can help so many people. But this patient that was reversed in 3 months, where he was given 6 months to live, I mean, I said the biochemistry works. We need more. And that's why I got into off-label drugs, because all of my patients, I mean, they all went into remission, but some of them stayed in remission for 2 years. That's not enough for me. I don't want just 2 years. My breast cancer patient from 2001 stayed in remission for over 8 years, and she was supposed to only live 3 months. 8 years isn't enough for me. I'm sorry. I'm greedy. I want more years. I want my patients to live 15, 20, 30 years, depending on their age. I want them to be 95 years of age and say, oh, well, I guess that's it. I'll check out. I've had enough. But I don't want them to be killed from a tumor, because we're smarter than the tumors. And we can be, and we can, and we are. And that's why it's so important that this information is out, both in my book, but also to talk about the frequencies. And then to mention you all, I'd like to put you on my website too, because I think it's very important that patients know that there are many things that they can do, often simultaneously, in order to reverse their cancers, and that's what they need to do. So this is where, oh, bless her little heart. This is Ashley. She's such a sweetheart. I love this woman.
Oh, she knows that you've been doing lots of talking, so this is a cup of tea.
That's wonderful. Oh, bless her heart. Thank you. Yeah, she's worried about me. She's been absolutely wonderful. And, you know, it's funny when you get ill. And, you know, I mean, okay, I've been through the gamut with the stupid broken neck and the breast tumor and stuff. But I was young then. And now I'm older, and I don't feel older, except for the little beasties. And when you find out who are really your friends, that alone, that love is so important. And that's why I love a lot of the groups of cancer patients that help each other, and not just panic, fear, and this and that, and oh, it's growing again, and oh, my brain metastasis is back, and this and that. Not the fear, but here's what I did to reverse this. This is what, like you're saying, people working together to help other, mankind working together, not against each other, not like we're seeing in business, alas, but like we're seeing in compassion and love, where people really care about each other. And Amelie's that way. I met her when her husband, unfortunately, only had 1 day left to live, and we couldn't turn him around because he had a stroke years earlier and so on. And her husband was so advanced in cancer and so emaciated, and he had been completely mentally incapacitated from the stroke years before. And she called me up that morning and said, don't come in, he's going to die today anyway. And I had never met her before. And I said, no, I gave my word. I do not expect a consultation fee. I don't want anything, but I gave my word. I always keep my word. So I went in and I met her. We spoke for hours. I loved her from the moment I met her. She's so kind and she's so wonderful. And would you believe that 3 years later, I'm staying at her house until my apartment is cleaned. I've been here over a month and a half, and she has been just like the kindest best friend you'd ever want to have. And how many people do you find that would do that? Friends that I knew, like, oh, you might be contaminated. Oh, you might have bird mites carrying. And she was like, ah, don't worry about it. And so finally I'm getting well thanks to her help and cooking and this and that and getting the apartment cleaned up. But it's amazing how a support group, and this is for all of you out there that are either treating patients or are patients, the emotional support group, that is probably the A&O in order to get your emotions in line again, and not for a reward for being sick, like, oh, I'm getting all this attention, which some people do, but instead, I'm getting all this love and I'm going to get myself well thanks to all of this love, and I love myself. That's important.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your talk today, Dana. It's been absolutely magical. You're a beautiful person, and so knowledgeable in so many areas. So thank you so much for your time and coming on our show.
Well,
And
thank you for all that you're doing for all of us.
we've got to stick together, Dana. People like you and us. So thank you once again. We have run out of time, but thank you for being so generous with your time and so generous with your knowledge. And I love your sense of humour as well. It's very enlightening. It could have been a very heavy-duty subject, but you sprinkled it with your little gems of anecdotes. And it's been a wonderful talk. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you once again, Dan. It's been fantastic having you on our show. And everybody,
working with Spooky too. Also, I'm looking very forward to learning more about this and actually using it more and more in patients and helping to guide them.
Absolutely. Please join our forum. Have a look at the spooky2videos.com. We've got training videos, and spooky2support.com as well. Very valuable resources. And the Facebook, we've got Rye for Life, which is enormous and magical people there. You'll just slide in there. Yeah, it's a fantastic place to be. So they're the places. They're the first ports of call for you, Dana. So thank you once again, and thank you for thank you all our participants. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.